Walter, can you give me some insight into what is the beginning of European history?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think that all African scholars, intellectuals, teachers, and students should know that question or should know that answer by asking that question. Because one has to realize when you begin to try to research European history, you cannot find any definite beginning dates for the European. But you have to look at the time that Alexander came into Egypt in 332 BCE. Okay? Now, when Alexander came into Egypt in 332 BCE, that was the beginning of European history. Because history consists of 5, I call it ingredients. And those 5 ingredients are time, people, places, events, and literature. Literature is very important because literature is used, or a writing system to create literature is used to document time, people, places, and events. Now, you got to remember also that our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians, those Africans over in Egypt, from their culture came the creation of the world's first alphabet. So therefore, they created the first alphabet ever created for human or mankind. So therefore, they were the only literate people living on planet Earth at that time, because an alphabet makes an individual literate. So without ancestors creating this alphabet, or the world's first created alphabet, because all other alphabets that are used today is nothing but a derivative of the ancient Egyptian hieratic, demotic, cursive, phonetic alphabet. In my book, The Historical Origin of Christianity, The Historical Origin of Islam, I have an alphabet chart in there. And if the individual will buy either one of those books and look to the extreme left, there's 3-line column there. And under that 3-line, above that 3-line column, it says Ancient Egypt. That means that those 3 lines represent the writing system of our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians. The very line to your very left of that 3-column alphabet is the hieroglyphic, or the pictorial symbols that our ancestors communicated with during the time of antiquity. And then where the alphabet starts is with the 2nd and 3rd line, which is the hieratic, demotic, cursive, Coptic Egyptian script that is used today. Because when the Greeks came into Egypt, they had no writing system. They were illiterate, uncivilized, and I say savages. And I'm not saying that to criticize anyone. I'm bringing out the facts of the matter about the Greeks. They had no institutions in Greece, nor did they have an institution in Europe. In order to have an institution, you have to have an alphabet to write with. So the only institutions on planet Earth during the time of antiquity, which is ancient times, were the institutions in Egypt during the time of antiquity. So when the Greeks came in 332, which is the beginning of all European history, they came in contact with our ancestors, our Melkite Coptic Egyptian ancestors. And these Melkite Copts were your bourgeois, or they ran the government, and so forth and so on. But you got to also remember that in Egypt, with the high civilization and these Greek Arabs coming in, the Greeks forced the Greek language on our ancestors, and they in turn learned that language and applied an alphabet to the Greek language. Today they call that Greek language an alphabet, and they put it out here as a misnomer to give and insinuate that the Greeks had an alphabet. The Greeks never had an alphabet themselves, but the Greek language our ancestors put an alphabet to. So that's how you get a Greek alphabet, you see. And when the Romans came in, 302 years after the Greek Ptolemaic dynasties ran out, they forced this Italian form of language on our ancestors, the same as the Greeks forced the Greek language on our ancestors. And our ancestors learned that Italian Roman type language and applied an alphabet to it. So today, that's where you get the Latin. And from the Latin comes the English and so forth and so on. And but getting back to Alexander and the Greeks, after coming into Egypt, saw all the beautiful culture that was created by our ancestors, ancient Egyptians. And they wanted to be made part of that. But in order for them to be made part of, they knew that they had to get accepted by the ancient Egyptian sacred society. So they set out to do that. They were rejected because our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians, never race mixed with other races. They didn't do that. And so they were rejected from it. So Alexander lived 9 years after coming in 332. In 323 BCE, he died. Now remember, BCE dates are counted down. BC dates are counted down. The dates that we live in are counted up.
Right.
So therefore, I want the listening audience to know the difference between BC dates and the dates that we live in today, after the Common Era or the AC dates. Mm-hmm. You see. So now, he died, and they had a Dio Duce meeting. Dio Duce means that word means successor of Alexander, and it was voted on that at this meeting, the Dio Duce meeting, that Ptolemy I, Lagi, called Sota, would be in control of Egypt. Okay, and this is in 323 after the death of Alexander. Now in 320, he tried to get his image put into and accepted by the sacred society or the sacred temple society in Egypt. Mm-hmm. Still rejected. But he found a member or a temple in Memphis, Egypt, where the members, the priests and priestesses took two of their gods, Osiris and Apis, and gave him the name of Serapis or Serapis. And he, with the attributes of Osiris, you see, Apis is the bull representative of Ra. Osiris is one of the African deities in Egypt. You had the African ancient Egyptian divine triad, consisting of Osiris, God the Father, Isis, Goddess Mother, and Heru, the S-U-N, the son of Isis and Osiris. And I'm going to tell you about that as we modulate about that and what happened to that triad. The triad is used today. Now, getting back to Ptolemy I, Lagi, called Sotar, in 320, his image was made into a supposed deity. And once that was done, and like I mentioned before, how it was done, it was by this group of priests and priestesses in Memphis, Egypt, taking two of their gods, Osiris and Apis, the bull representative of Ra, which is attributes of Osiris, and giving it to this Ptolemaic ruler.
Ceremoniously.
In a ceremonial way, yes. And he became old Serapis, and he also took the O out and said it's Serapis. Now, he is called Ptolemy I Lagi Sotar, S-O-T-E-R, means savior. How did he become and get that name of savior? Well, at the Diadochi meeting, you had the army generals of Alexander that after he died, after the death of Alexander in 323, they had this Diadochi meeting to see who was going to be in control of the territories that Alexander had taken over. You had the Ptolemies in Egypt, and then you had Seleucus Nicaea in Syria and Turkey, which is Northeast Africa. Today it's called the Middle East. So the meeting was held in Egypt. And when he went to that meeting, I'm talking about Seleucus Nicaea, so they can see who's going to divide up Alexander's so-called territory. And it was decided that Ptolemy I, Lagi, would get Egypt. It was decided that Seleucus Nicaea would get Syria and Turkey. Okay? Now, once that happened, when he went back to, I'm talking about Seleucus Nicaea, when he went back to Syria and Turkey, he found out that he was overthrown by one of his lieutenants that he left in charge there, Antigonus, who overthrew him. And what he did, Seleucus Nicaea went back into Egypt and told Ptolemy I Lagi what had happened to him. So Ptolemy I Lagi got his army together, and they went in to Syria and Turkey, and he overthrew Antigonus and gave back that territory of Syria and Turkey to Seleucus Nicaea, and he set up what is known as a Seleucus dynasty. You see? And that's how Ptolemy I Lagi got to be the savior. He saved that part of the world and the country of Syria and Turkey for Seleucus Nicaea. So he became the savior. Now the savior is very important because the savior is used in and connected with Jesus the Christ. That Ptolemy I Lagi called Sotar, like I mentioned before, was given the attributes of Osiris and Apis. Today, he's worshipped on that cross as Jesus the Christ. People have to really understand that. And in my two books, The Historical Origin of Christianity, Historical Origin of Islam, I walk you through the progression of that, take you through the council meetings and so forth and so on. But that's how that was done. See? And then I was 13 succeeding Ptolemies after Ptolemy I, all the way down, in all, it was 14 of them. 14 Ptolemies in all, you see? And that takes you all the way down from 332, from the entrance of Alexander into Egypt, all the way down to 302 years later, 30 BC, when the Romans came in. That's when they came into Egypt and took over from the Ptolemies. You see? So you have to, that's the beginning date for the Romans. And the ending date for the Romans was when the Ottoman Empire began in 1300. You see? So,
what was the Ottoman Empire? I mean, what did it consist of in terms of territory and ideology?
well, the territory that they took over, the Byzantine territory, which consists of Egypt, Syria, Turkey. Today, where you get Lebanon, was no Lebanon then until 1922. And you also get Jordan, which was no Jordan until 1929. You get the territory of Iraq, was no Iraq until 1920. You get the territory of Kuwait, was no Kuwait until 1920. And you get Iran, and you get Arabia, and you get Yemen, and you get Palestine, and you get all of the North African countries along the Mediterranean. You get Libya, you get Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, Mauritania, all those, that was all the Byzantine Empire. Then you go up into Europe, into the Balkan areas of Europe, okay? Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, Albania, Hungary, Romania, all that was part of the Byzantine Empire, okay? And then you go into the southern parts of Russia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, up in that area, you see? So that was all their territory until the Ottoman Turks took over their territory in 1300, which is the 14th century. They took over all that territory there, away from the Byzantine rule.
Which ruled from what time to from what period?
Who's that?
The Byzantine Empire.
The Byzantine Empire ruled from 30 BC until 1300.
So that was Roman.
Roughly about 1,000 years.
Okay, so that was primarily the Roman.
I'm sorry. 1,600 years. I'm sorry. 30 BC, and you add 1,300 to it. You got 16,600 years.
Okay. All right. So that was all the Roman territory.
That was the Roman territory until the Ottoman took over.
Okay, who were the Ottomans?
Well, the Ottomans began to overrun the Byzantine Empire, or take territory from them, starting with the Seljukian Turks, or the Seljuks. And their time was 1071. They erupted out of Iran. Now, where did they come from? They came from Afghanistan and came from Pakistan. If you look at a map, Afghanistan borders Iran. Iran is in Northeast Africa, misnomer to call it Middle East. Okay? And they came out of Pakistan. Pakistan borders Iran. See? So you have that eruption in 1071 coming in and invading and taking territory away from the Byzantine emperors. That's the reason why Alexius I Comnenus in 1096 called for the First Crusade to come there to try to save his territory and try to save Christendom. You see, where the world's first Christian church was built, there in Constantinople, Turkey. The world's Christian church is the Church of Hagia Sophia, built by African scholars, commissioned to be built by African scholars and African architects to design that church in 532, and they finished in 5 years, 537. But getting back to the Seljukian Turks, they came in with different dialects. You see, they came in what is known as the Arabic dialect or a Arabic dialect, because there's no one defining Arabic language that you can say, this is Arabic, you see? So they came, that's where they came from, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and they began to erupt in that area in 1071, you see?
Who, ethnically though, who are the Arabs?
Well, the Arabs come from different parts of the world. You got Azerbaijanians, they are Arabs, but they speak a different dialect. Armenians are Arabs. They lived in that area. The Armenians lived in Turkey. Azerbaijanians lived in Turkey, and they lived in Arabia, and so forth and so on. You see? But they came out of the southern parts of Russia, you see? And then you got Afghanistanians, who is part of that what you call that Arab speaking people. They came in with a Afghanistanian dialect. A Caspian, people lived around the Caspian Sea had a dialect, different dialect. You see, you got Iraqi Arabic. You got Egyptian Arabic. You got Arabian Arabic. You got Kuwaiti Arabic. You got Iranian Arabic. You got Jordanian Arabic. See, every location, they speak a different dialect. And then you got Palestinian Arabic. You got Egyptian Arabic. You got Libyan Arabic. Muammar Gaddafi spoke a different language, dialect. You got Tunisian Arabic. And you got Algerian Arabic, Moroccan Arabic, Mauritanian Arabic. So everybody over there, you got all those dialects over there in Africa. They call it the Middle East. Here's the thing. The Moors, by the Moors being the direct descendant of the ancient Egyptians, the word Moor is only a nickname. That's all it is. Mm-hmm. Meaning that the Moor and the ancient Egyptian is one and the same. Mm-hmm. You see? Mm-hmm. Now, by the Moors being a literate people because of their ancestry ties with the ancient Egyptians, mm-hmm. you know? So what they did is that they created a standardized Arabic script for that language, for all those languages. Now, all those languages that I mentioned, spoken by different people, if you put 10 of those people in a room, they couldn't understand each other because they're speaking a different dialect. Mm-hmm. But if they're all taught with a standardized alphabet, they can write down what they wanted to say to the next person. And the next person can write down what he wanted to say to the next person by using the standardized Arabic script. Mm-hmm. That was created, that was done by the Moors, did that. You see? Mm-hmm. To all these different Arabs, as we call them today, coming over there in that area of Northeast Africa and North Central Africa. You see? So this is where these people emanated from, you see? So first with the Seljukian and Turk, then here comes Osmanli, who created what is known as the Ottoman Empire, okay? He began to come up in 1285, you see, after the Christian era. And the Ottoman Empire did not start until 1300. Let's say 15 years later, they had erected the Ottoman Empire. So that's when the Ottoman Empire started, in 1300. And that Ottoman Empire lasted all the way until after World War One. World War One was 1914 to 1918, and that's when the British toppled the Ottoman Empire in 1918. At the end of caused the end of World War One to come about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. You okay?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
I'm waiting for you. I'm through.
Oh. Okay. Now, you got Libya,
Tunisia,
all of that area. Talk about that area, North Africa, that used to be all African people at one point, and how was that transformed from? How was it overrun? How did it turn to right now? You go to everything over there is Arab in North Africa. How did that happen?
It began when Alexander the Greek first came to Egypt in 332. After he came in, there was an influx of Europeans coming into that area of the world. Okay, where did they come from? They came out of the Balkan areas of Europe, Bulgaria, Macedonia, Yugoslavia, Albania, Hungary, Romania, etc., over into, crossing the Mediterranean over into North Africa, those North African countries. They began to settle all in there, as well as in Egypt. Mm-hmm. You see? So that's how that happened. And then when the Seljukian Turks and the Ottoman Empire began, then all those, you had a different influx of people coming in, like I mentioned earlier. And they all settled up along North Africa along with these other Europeans. But they dominated, the Seljukian Turks with these Arabic, as we call it, the Arabic dialects, dominated the Bulgarians or the Balkan Europeans who settled all along North Africa. See, so therefore you get a different mixture there. See,
now, what happened to the Egyptians that was in that territory? Where did they go?
They were still there, and but see, as time went on, centuries went on, the white folks that we know are called Arabs today, they began to overrun them, or let's say, as our African brothers and sisters died out, they replaced them by way of settling there. So that's what took place. So today, as you go over in all those areas, you're going to see throughout the population, you're going to see some of our people in that population still today, but they're very few in numbers.
So they were literally over time overrun.
Correct.
And they also moved south because you get in West Africa, you get, say, for like the Khan, who traced their lineage back to ancient Egypt. So they also were pushed south into the Sudan and eventually scattered in other parts of Africa.
You're talking about the Africans?
I'm talking about the Africans, the ancient Egyptians.
Okay, well no, I think it was you that told me one time that if you took a bottle of grape juice, mm-hmm. and everybody knows the color of grape juice, and you put it up on the faucet and let clear water run into that grape juice bottle that's full of grape juice, eventually that grape juice won't be blue anymore. It'll be clear, right?
Mm-hmm.
So So this is what happened over in that area.
Mm-hmm.
You see?
Mm-hmm.
So, you see, they came in and stayed where our people and lived among our people, but our people died out, but no more Africans came in after that.
Mm-hmm.
You see? So that's what happened over in that territory of the world.
Now, when you say ancient Egyptian civilization, are you talking about also Nile Valley civilization? And if you are, what would have been the territory of the Nile Valley?
Yes, I'm talking about the Nile Valley civilization and territory. The territory of the Nile Valley civilization consisted of Ethiopia, or Abyssinia, which is the ancient name for Ethiopia, Nubia, which is today called the Sudan, and ancient Egypt. All three of those names, and all three of those names covers a territory which consists of and make up the Nile Valley civilization. And I'll go a little further as to name the African ancient Egyptian Commonwealth that was put up under one umbrella. Under that umbrella of the African ancient Egyptian Commonwealth, you consist of Libya to the west, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, and Mauritania. All those countries along North Africa was all under the umbrella of the African ancient Egyptian Commonwealth, as well as the Nile Valley civilization, or those other Nile Valley countries such as Ethiopia and the Sudan, which was Libya at that time.
Now, do you have any idea how old this ancient Egypt would be, or when the pyramids and Sphinx were constructed?
No one can tell you that. Everybody can make a guesstimation, okay? But there's no actual proof of that by way of facts, you see. The only way you can, let's say, categorize or label the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid is the mystery of man. That's what it is. See, I will give that as the answer. Rather than say, well, that was erected this date and that date. I will only be guessing. Okay? And whoever gives a date for it, they're guessing also. So my answer to that question would be, the Great Pyramid is the mystery of man. One will never know the meaning of that, or how, when the Great Pyramid was built. No one can tell you that.
Now, what role did the ancient Egyptians play in the Roman civilization during the time, say from Alexander straight on, in terms of politics, religion, within and during the time of the Roman and Greek rule? I've heard that they were part of the both educational and religious system during the time. Can you kind of give us a view of what that really is and what it would look like?
Well, see, the educational system in ancient Egypt was produced and conducted by the Sacred Temple Society, or the temple system. Those were your schools. And they had these temple schools all over Egypt. Like we have schools today all over America in certain places and in certain cities. You find schools there to accommodate the citizens living in that area. So the ancient Egyptians did the same thing. In fact, what we have experienced today, living in this country, and you could put it for the whole world, is nothing but a duplicate of what our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians, did during the time of antiquity. See, that was their school system. Now, when Ptolemy came in, and they rejected putting this image in their sacred temple system and society to be put alongside of Osiris, Ptolemy closed them all down, eliminated them. So what the priests and priestesses did at that time, and we're talking about 320 BC when he did this, when his image was made into Serapis, which is known as Jesus the Christ today. When he did that, our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians, he did not allow them to build any temples, any more temples. He did not allow them to use their temples anymore because he closed them all down except for the one in Memphis, Egypt, where they created his image into and gave him the attributes of Osiris and gave him a new name by Osiris or Serapis. You see? So they used their homes, I'm talking about the ancient Egyptians, used their homes for spiritual fellowship. And they used their home to homeschool their children, to keep that going, keep that literacy going, you see? And so that will take you through the Ptolemaic period, which started in 332 when Alexander the Greek came in, and all the way down to the Roman period when the Romans began to come in 330 BC, which is 302 years after the Ptolemaic period had ended.
So Egypt became the breadbasket for the Roman army. How did Rome control, dominate, and exploit her territories?
Well, you see, the Romans, you got to remember this, Clemson. It was very easy to come into Egypt under Alexander and also under the Roman rule, because our ancestors, ancient Egyptians, never had an army, nor did they have jails. They didn't have that. They were a civilized people, and they coexisted with everyone. So therefore, you cannot be a civilizer and a civilized people and then go around and take territory with your army and brutalize other races of people as you come into their country, rape their women, set the whole system of their existence. You can't do that, you see? So our ancestors were civilizers, so it's very easy for them to come in and take over, you see? They didn't have any armies to protect themselves. They knew nothing about warfare, our ancestors. They knew about civilization. They knew about literacy. They knew about mathematics. They knew about domesticating the animals, domesticating the earth, agriculture, animal husbandry, cosmetics, the alphabet. They knew about music. See, they were the first musicians on planet Earth. That's a very important thing for one to know that.
Talk about that. What I just want to throw it out there because some people don't realize what music really entails when you begin to look at its mathematical structure.
Correct. When you look at the mathematical structure of music, I'm talking about organized music. Okay?
You're a musician.
I'm a musician. Now, in organized music, the first thing you have to have is a scale. Do, re, mi, so, fa, la, ti. That's 7 notes. And do, re, mi, so, fa, la, ti, do. Do is back where you started from. Some do to do. You see, down, wrong. So, but in between you got 7 notes. Now, those 7 notes are alphabets. That's right. A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. That's your basic alphabet. And then, who created the world's first alphabet? The ancient Egyptians, our ancestors. Mm-hmm. So therefore, that's the base foundation of all organized music. You see? Now, they also created mathematics. In order to build the Great Pyramid or anything, the Sphinx or anything that you build, you have to know mathematics.
Right.
So therefore, what's in music, organized music, is mathematics. You see? You got to have 8 bars to music, or 16 bars, 32 bars, so forth and so on. That's how you count your meters, by way of the alphabet. Also, in music, you have symbols. You had the symbols were being used in ancient Egypt. They call them hieroglyphs. Those are symbols. So in music, you have the sharp symbol, the flat symbol, you have the musical clef, you have different symbols. See? And you look in books that are depicting ancient Egyptians, and you find them playing instruments. You find them playing the harp. They was the first people on planet Earth to play instruments, musical instruments. See? So you see them playing the harp, you see them playing what looks like a banjo string instrument. You see them blowing a flute, a lute, tambourine, all of that is part of music. So they were your first musicians on planet Earth. Why? Because they created organized, constructive music. See, based on their culture of creating the alphabet, mathematics, and using symbols for communication. So that's your structure right there for music. They were your first musicians on planet Earth, and they created and built instruments to play their music. So they were the first musicians. And a lot of brothers and sisters in the African community, they don't realize that, which is, I'm not blaming them for that. You know, it just came to me about 3 years ago. By me being a musician, I'm sitting there thinking about music and so forth and so on, and then the light bulb came on.
Now, coming out of that same understanding, could they have used music to manipulate weights and even to create force from music that they could have lift weights or move things, just like you can hit a note and break a glass?
You're talking about levitation.
Levitation. Do you think that could have been done with music?
I don't know, Clemson. I'll be sitting here telling you something I don't know nothing about.
Okay, then let's move on. I asked you the role of the ancient Egyptians within the Roman dominated within the Roman politics in terms of its say within the religious structure. You can elaborate on that, but I'd heard that there were African popes and so forth. So maybe you can kind of develop the role that the ancient Egyptians may have played within Roman society.
You have to go back into the beginning of when Alexander the Greek came into Egypt. You also have to go back during the time of the Romans first came into ancient Egypt. And you got to realize that they had no alphabet to develop themselves from where they came from. And they came in contact, or when they came in contact with our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians, that's when they began to develop. They did not develop in Europe. Europeans did not develop in Europe. They developed in Egypt and Northeast Africa, okay, during the time of antiquity. So they didn't do any developing on their own. They had nothing on their own before they came there to have a development or an input in civilization, you see? So it was them coming around, our ancestors, emulating our ancestors. And at that point, they began to develop. Now, getting back to the Melkite Coptic Egyptians who was running the government over there in ancient Egypt. That's who they came around, and that's who they began to develop themselves around, okay? And going back to Ptolemy one Laggate called Sotar, the word S-O-T-R means savior. And you spoke about the religious system over there, okay? The Greeks, under the Ptolemy and Alexander the Greek, wanted to be made part of the ancient Egyptian sacred temple society. He wanted his image, or their image, to be put into those temples. So when that temple in Memphis, Egypt, used two of their deities, Ra, which is a bull representative of Ra, and Osiris, which is the representative of the ancient Egyptian god, or the ancient Egyptian god of the ancient Egyptian divine triad. Say Osiris, Isis, and Haru. Giving that name to Ptolemy, which is Serapis, or old Serapis, giving that Ptolemy ruler the attributes of Osiris. And I had told you how the name Sotar earlier got to be attached to this Ptolemy. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now, once that was done, we get into the religious system now. See, you got to remember, our Melkites created this image to try to appease the Greeks and the Romans, okay? They didn't do it for themselves. See, our ancestors, the Melkite Coptic Egyptians, created the foundation for Christianity as we know it today. But you won't get what they created out of today's Christianity. Because Christianity today, the people all over the world who are Christians, they're getting European Christianity. They don't get to they don't get to know the people who created the foundation and the tenets of Christianity, which was the Melkite Coptic Egyptians, our ancestors. Now, when this image of Ptolemy was given the name Osiris or Serapis, the Greeks tried to get this Serapis image accepted into the sacred society in Egypt, like I mentioned before. They refused that. Refused that image. They refused to bring him in because they didn't race mix. So what he did, he closed down all the temples.
They didn't race mix?
No, sir.
Okay.
They didn't race mix. And he closed down all the temples as a result of that. Mm-hmm. But he still tried to get our ancestors to accept that image. In fact, like I said, from the time of Ptolemy I, Laggate, all the way down to 13 other Ptolemies, you had a total of 14 Ptolemies. They all tried to get our ancestors to accept that image into their sacred society. Even though they didn't do it, Ptolemy closed down all the temples. They began to use their homes, like I mentioned before, to homeschool their children and to meet on a social basis and spiritualize with each other. Okay? So let's modulate through the Ptolemaic system. You're going to modulate all into the Roman era. And all during that time, we're talking about from 320 until the first ecumenical council meeting of Nicaea I. And this is all part of understanding the religious system that was being created there by the Melkites for the Europeans. Now this is done for the Europeans, not for our ancestors.
Yeah.
Right. So therefore, you're going to modulate from 320 all the way up into 325 after the Common Era, okay, which is a total of 645 years, because BC days you count down, today's days we live and we count up. See, so therefore you're talking about 645 years, okay, and they tried to get our ancestors in the secular Coptic Egyptian community to accept this image, and they refused to do it. Okay? Now, you're going to come up, and I'm the only one that I know that's talking about it in my book, Historical Origin of Christianity. There were 3 historical events that brought about the creation of the Ecumenical Council of Nicaea I, 325, the world's first religious council meeting ever held. The 3 things that brought that about was 1, Donatus schismatic controversy, the donation of Constantine, and a strong statement by Arius. The Donatus schismatic controversy was a 4th century North African schism when a prominent member of that community, Mensurius, was asked to turn over certain sacred writings to the Roman ruler, Diocletian, okay? And he did that against the advice of Bishop Donatus and against the advice of the Metropolitan Bishop Secundus, okay? And that is called and known in history as the Donatus schismatic controversy. An individual can look it up by studying history. The second historical event that caused the Council of Nicaea I to come about is the donation of Constantine, which is very important. The donation of Constantine. Constantine was your Roman occupier in Syria and Turkey and in Egypt at that time. After seeing what happened with the schism in North Africa among the Coptic secular community, which I just mentioned is known in history as the Donatus schismatic controversy, he came up with a bright idea. Now, all this time, the 645 years, they've been trying to get, these Greek and Roman rulers, been trying to get our ancestors in the Coptic secular community to accept this white image called Serapis, which is nothing but the image of Ptolemy I Laiki, to accept that image as a god. They refused it. So here comes Constantine with a bright idea. He said, now, since that community is split because of the Donatus schismatic controversy, I can now go in and find a member in the secular community and offer him a deal. That offer was, and is known in history as the donation of Constantine. Constantine found a member in the secular community by the name of Sylvester I. And he told Sylvester, I will give you my imperial power over your community on a temporal basis if you get your people in the Coptic Egyptian secular community to accept Serapis as a god. And all I want you to do is to baptize me in your community, where I have no authority, because I'm giving you all my imperial authority over your people in the Melkite community as well as the secular community. You will be the head HNIC. And everybody knows in the African community what the HNIC means. Okay? So Sylvester accepted that. He said, all I want you to do is baptize me so I can be part of your community. I have no authority over your community. You do. Okay? And that is called, and known in history as a donation of Constantine. Now, Arius, the third historical event in history that caused the Council of Nicaea 1 325 to come about, was a strong statement by Arius. Arius, after seeing what Constantine had offered to Sylvester I, Arius said that Serapis was a created creature, dissimilar from the Father. Now, who is the Father? The Father is Osiris. You go back to the ancient Egyptian divine triad of Osiris, God the Father, Isis, the goddess mother, and Horus or Haru, the S-U-N, the son of Osiris or Osar, and Isis or Set. He is the son of those two. It makes up the ancient Egyptian divine triad. Now, Arius said that this image of Serapis is known today as Jesus the Christ. I'm going to tell you how that came about. Was a created creature, dissimilar from the Father, which is the Father is Osiris, and Osiris is God and the Father. You see, dissimilar from Osiris, a perfect creature, but a creature nevertheless. And all three of those things, Donatus, schismatic controversy, the donation of Constantine, and the strong statement by Arius, caused the Melkite Coptic Egyptians to call the first ecumenical council meeting. People think that Constantine did that. Constantine didn't do that. He had no authority to do that. He gave it away. He gave his authority away to Sylvester I. So it was Sylvester, the Coptic Egyptian. Now he's a part of the Melkite Egyptians now, who called that meeting of Nicaea I. And all ecumenical council meetings took place in Turkey. There were 9 ecumenical council meetings that took place in Turkey. So this was the first one. Now this is what they did, Clemson. I want the listening audience to do this. I want you to take a piece of blank paper, and I want you to write this on this paper. The ancient Egyptian divine triad that consists of Osiris, Isis, and Horus. Now I want you to, under that, I want you to draw a line under that. I want the listening audience to do this. Draw your line on that, but you, blank piece of paper, you write the ancient Egyptian divine African triad. That's what you write on there. And you draw a line under that. And then when you draw your line, I want you to come down about 1 inch or 1.5 inches. And I want you to draw 3 circles, 3 round circles, 1 to your left, 1 in the middle, and 1 to your right. Okay? Now, above the first circle on your left, above that circle, I want you to put down, write the word God and Father. Put that down. God and Father, above that first circle to your left. And I want you to put in that circle, I want you to put Osiris in that circle. That's Osiris is the God and the Father. Okay? Now I want you to go all the way, I want you to go to the next middle circle. And you put down there, above that circle, I want you to write S-U-N, Sun. Put down the Sun. S-U-N. And in the circle, I want you to put Horus in there. Or Haru, however you want to, whatever you want to put in there. And then on the last circle to your right, I want you to put above that circle, I want you to put Goddess Mother. And then in the circle itself, you put Isis. You got that? Okay, now, you got the 3 African ancient Egyptian gods of ancient Egypt. Okay?
Let me ask you, how did they become gods? How did that begin? That Osiris, Isis, and Horus were set up as gods?
And goddesses?
Yes.
And that represent the family of ancient Egypt. That was done by the ancient Egyptians themselves. For the sole purpose of their temple, sacred temple society. Okay, they had other gods too now, but these were your main 3 gods. You see, that represented a family, a unit. You see, right. So that is so far as I can go with it.
Okay.
It's because if I elaborate more, then I'll be talking something that I'm guessing, you know. So now, let's get back to this. This is very important.
Yes.
Okay? Now, the Melkite Coptic Egyptians call this meeting, the first ecumenical council meeting to be held on earth, called the Council of Nicaea 1325, called by Sylvester I, not by Constantine. Constantine gave his powers away to Sylvester.
Right.
And he was baptized in their community, the Coptic Egyptian community. So he had no authority. So it was the Melkite Copts who called this first meeting. See? Now what they did at the first meeting, get your tablet back.
Okay.
Get your writing out. Listening audience, get your writing out.
Okay.
Now you got, everybody knows the icon or the image of this Jesus the Christ as being a European white man. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now take that image, this white image, and you mark out, go in the middle and take out Haru. Just draw an X to it. Okay? And take out, up above, he was the sun, right?
Yeah.
Cross that out. Okay? Now you got this white image that they call Serapis, is that right?
Right.
That is known today as Jesus the Christ, is that correct? They put him in Haru's place, or Horus's place. They put the S-O-N in there, this white image, by taking out this African image of Haru, which is the son of Osiris and Isis, right? So this white image became the son of Osiris and Isis. This is what our Melkite Coptic misguided Egyptian ancestors did in order to appease the Europeans, to try to get them a deity.
I can see it.
You see that?
Yeah.
Bring your, don't put your tablet down, I'm not through.
Oh, okay.
Keep it there.
Yeah.
So he put, now you've heard the term that Jesus the Christ is the Son of Man.
Yes.
Man can only create creatures.
Yes.
Man by himself cannot create anything with life in it by himself. A female by herself cannot create anything with life in it.
Right.
But the two together having a sexual union together, they can procreate. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Getting back to the term that everybody, I assume, has heard, that Jesus the Christ is the Son of Man. Man can only make by himself creatures. Man cannot make by himself anything with life in it. A female by herself cannot make anything with life in it. The man and the woman's got to be united in a sexual unit, endeavor. And from that encounter of the man and the woman, procreation comes. Humans come from that. But man cannot make anything with life in it by himself, the same as a woman. So this, the reason why Arius said that this image of Serapis, known today as Jesus the Christ, was a created creature, not like the father Osiris, but a created creature, a perfect creature, but a creature nevertheless. So now, with the insertion of this Serapis, this white image, who took the place of Haru, the son of Osiris and Isis, the African son, the S-U-N of Osiris and Isis, with the insertion of this white image of Serapis. Now Osiris, who's an African, Isis, who's an African, has a white son. And the Melkites did this, and they said, when it was done, that Serapis and Osiris was one and the same. In other words, God the Father, which is Osiris, God the Son, which is Serapis, the same. It's called the Homogeneous Creed. Okay? God the Father, God the Son, the same. Okay? Now, it's called, today that creed is called the Apostles' Creed. But that's the origin of the creed, which is the Homogeneous Creed. God the Father, God the same. God the Son, the same. Okay? Now, we're going to move up 56 years later to 381 at the Ecumenical Council of Constantinople I. At that council meeting, the Melkites tried to get the Homogeneous Creed, and the Romans tried to get the Homogeneous Creed to be the creed of the Roman government, accepted by our ancestors in the secular Coptic Egyptian community. They refused to accept that creed, because if they accepted that creed, then they would be accepted Serapis. They didn't want to do that. So the argument still went on. Now, we're going to come up 751 years after that image of Serapis was made at the Council of Ephesus in 431. At the Council of Ephesus, get your papers and your pad back out, everyone. At the Council of Ephesus, the argument was going on by the monophysites, saying that Serapis, which is this white image, which is now the son of Osiris and Isis, was a created creature with an Osiris-like spirit, but no human nature. This is the key. You say, okay, you got an Osiris-like spirit, but you don't have no human nature. That's the argument. Nestorius was a monophysite. He did not accept the Theotokos And I'm going to get to that. Now, in order to have a human nature, one has to be born through the body of a female. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. What they did to get Serapis, which is a created creature created by man, no human being, only with the attributes of Osiris, they went back into the ancient Egyptian divine triad, and they took Isis out of there, and they created a created creature called the Virgin Mary. Okay? Now cross out over there Isis, cross out Isis. Okay? And you put below that the Virgin Mary. These Melkite Coptic Egyptians gave this created creature made by them the attributes of Isis in order for this Serapis created creature to have a human nature. And they gave this created creature, the Virgin Mary, the title of Theotokos, and that word Theotokos means the Mother of God. And this is when Nestorius, who is a member of the secular Coptic Egyptian community, said he could not accept that title of Theotokos for this Virgin Mary.
Mother of God.
The Mother of God. Now, what the Melkite Coptic Egyptians did with these two created creatures, you got the Virgin Mary with the attributes of Isis. You got this created creature, Serapis, with the attributes of Osiris. They amalgamated the two together in order for this created creature, Serapis, to have a human nature through a mother. Okay? And once that amalgamation was done, the Melkite Coptic Egyptians speaking Greek said that this is the Christos.
Right.
And in English, the Christos means this is the Christ. So this is how this Christ, he's no longer Serapis anymore. Now he's Christ. You got that?
Right. Yes.
Now, Christ is white, European. The Virgin Mary, his mother, is a European. You see? Now, you got one last deity in the African ancient Egyptian divine triad. Is that correct?
Yeah, Haru.
You got Osiris or Asa.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
Okay.
Horus, I'm saying.
Horus has been taken out. He's now Christ.
Okay.
See, I took Horus out, the first of the ancient Egyptian divine triad members. I took him out and replaced Horus, the S-U-N, the sun, with the S-O-N, this white image of Serapis that's known today as Jesus the Christ.
See, let me ask you this.
Wait.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm at a point. Now you got two of the African deities in that African ancient Egyptian divine triad removed, right?
Yes.
And replaced by white images. All created creatures created by the Melkites. The Virgin Mary is a created creature. Her title of Theotokos was given to her, all created. Serapis was a created creature. And they amalgamated those two created creatures together in order for Serapis to have a human nature by way of coming through a woman, a female.
Yeah.
So now you only have one African deity left in that triad. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's Osiris. Is that right?
That's correct.
So our Osiris now got a white sun and a white replacement of female that replaced Isis. Is that right? That looks funny, doesn't it? People will question that, right?
Right.
You know what they did? The Melkite Coptic Egyptians did to Osiris? They made him invisible, incorporeal. The word incorporeal means invisible. So now people say they pray to God. Is that right? They have no image of God. You put 10 people in a room and say, give me your interpretation of God. You have 10 different interpretations. No one ever seen God. It's invisible, incorporeal. But now, they have a story that this invisible God, which is Osiris, sent his only begotten Son to save the world from sin, which is a corporal, visible icon of a white image of a Jesus the Christ. Is that right?
That is correct.
So that's how they wiped out, the Melkite wiped out the ancient Egyptian African divine triad.
Wow. Now, people would say, but was Osiris, did he have a mother? Was he born of a female? Horus, Osiris, Isis, which were the ancient Egyptians' gods. So did they come through the womb of a woman?
I can't answer that. The reason being is that the ancient Egyptians had a symbolic society and culture. A lot of things are symbolic. And if I would do the listening audience a disservice if I tried to go into that, answer that. No, I can't answer that.
Okay.
Okay? And nobody else can answer that. I don't care how much education they have.
That nobody can answer that?
Because of the symbolic culture and civilization that the ancient Egyptians had. Can anybody tell you how they built the Great Pyramid? No. It's called the mystery of mankind. Can anybody tell you how they built the Sphinx? The body of the Sphinx is 1 city block long, 6 stories high with an African face carved in stone. They can't tell you that. Called the mystery of mankind. How they took those stones of 490 feet in the air, weighing 250 tons each.
2 million of them.
Right. How they did it. It's called the mystery of life. Nobody can answer that. They come along and give you a theory, but that's not no proof. The theory, you believe it, disbelieve it, or be neutral. You see? So I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know how they did it or where Osiris, Isis, and Horus came from. I can't tell you that.
Mm-hmm. But
okay?
They were here when the European came.
Or when he came over in Egypt?
Yeah.
Of course. They had been used in their, like I mentioned before, in the sacred society in their temples. That was their African, ancient Egyptian divine gods. They made up the ancient Egyptian divine triad.
Now, from there, he is the European Jesus has completely replaced, and those councils have more or less
developed that. But see, go ahead.
No, those councils have ordained it.
Same thing, yeah.
To be so.
Yeah, well, all I'm saying to you, Clemson, let me stay on this roll now. Don't ask me no questions.
Okay, please, roll.
Okay.
Roll.
Because I'm on a roll now.
Okay, all right.
Because
I got my question.
the people, you can get your question at the end of when I say I'm through with it.
Okay, all right.
Okay, then you can edit all this stuff out what we're talking right now. Now, when so now Osiris is now invisible. You see? He is God. People are praying to God. Okay? They don't understand about God. You see? God is a man. That's all God is. Okay? God is a female. God and female is humanity. It's all part of creation. But I'm going to get into that later on. Yeah. But let me finish this. So now, I hope one can see how this Jesus the Christ, or this Christ came about. Mm-hmm. See, that's how they did. Now, 20 years later, at the Council of Chalcedon, 451,
right,
the question was still going on, and the argument was still going on about the human nature of Christ now, no longer Serapis, it's Christ now. So at that council meeting, called the Council of Ephesus 451, like I said, all council meetings were held in Turkey. At that council meeting, they took two words to try to get this image of Christ, a human nature. The first word was persopon, person. A person, if you look it up, is a human being. And then the next word they use, substantiality. If you look that up, it means the third person in the Trinity. Okay? So, and they said that this is what we're going to do in order to give this image of Christ a human nature. But the the Coptic Egyptians in the secular community refused to accept that. So the argument went on. Okay, and at the end of the close of the Council of Chalcedon is the beginning of Christianity. Your first Christians on earth were your Melkite Coptic Egyptians. Not a lot of our brothers and sisters think that the beginning of Christianity started in Ethiopia. That's not true. Christianity didn't come to Ethiopia until the middle of the 19th century, but that goes into another history. So, your first Christians on earth were these African Melkite Coptic Egyptians. That's who they are. Okay, that's who they were. So, 81 years later, after the Council of Chalcedon, we're coming up to...
What was decided in the Council of Chalcedon?
The argument was between the Melkite Copts and the Monophysite Copts. The Monophysites they were grassroots Coptic secular Egyptians. The Melkite Copts were up in the higher echelon with the Greek and Roman rulers, like I mentioned before. They were your bourgeois. You see? So they tried to create a god to appease the Europeans. This is how this Christianity and this image of Christ came about, trying to appease the European, try to make him into a god. And I showed you at the Council of Ephesus how they did it. I showed you at the Council of Nicaea I how they did it. See? So now the argument is still going on now. And they try to use, 20 years after Ephesus, at the Council of Chalcedon 451, they try to use those two words, persopon and substantiality.
Right.
To make this this icon, image of Serapis, then now known as Jesus Christ, then made into the Christ, try to get that name, that created creature, a human nature by using those two words. The Monophysites did not accept that. The Nestorians did not accept that. Both Nestorians and Monophysites were all one and the same. Okay? Now, 51 years later, under Justinian and his wife Theodora, in 632, they built the world's first Christian church on earth.
Where?
In Constantinople, Turkey, known as Istanbul, Turkey today. Okay? And that church is still there today as I speak, but it's a museum today. It was made into a museum in 1934 by the United States government. Let's get back to the original origin of the world's first Christian church. Justinian and his wife commissioned African Egyptian architects and builders to build that church. Okay? Africans had to, because no Europeans knew how to build anything. Greeks and the Romans didn't know how to build anything, because it takes a person or a people coming out of a culture of building. The culture of building was done in the whole entire world by our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians. They were the world's first builders on earth. Why? Because they created an alphabet and they created mathematics. You have to have mathematics, you have to have both in order to build anything, any type of structure.
You gonna go up any height?
What?
Yes, you have to have mathematics.
Correct.
You're gonna go up any height.
Right. You're gonna build anything.
Anything.
Right. Got to have mathematics. So mathematics came out of the culture of the ancient Egyptians.
That is correct.
So now, Justinian commissioned these African architects and African brothers to build and design the world's first Christian church that was in 532, known as the Church of Hagia Sophia, finished 5 years later in 537. Okay? Now, once that was done, Justinian wanted to take back the donation of Constantine. He got him a Christ and got a church for Christ. The Church of Hagia Sophia. The Church of the Holy Wisdom. Another name for Mary and Christ. Church for Mary and Christ. Church of Hagia Sophia. So now, he decided that it was time for him to take back the donations of Constantine, to get it out of the Melkite Coptic Egyptians' hands into his hands. Okay? Which then he would be in charge of ecclesiastical and have ecclesiastical authority as well as political authority over that community. But Epaphroditus was the one in 532 when he was building that Church of Hagia Sophia, the world's first Christian church. He had the authority of the donations of Constantine. Justinian asked him to relinquish that. He would refuse to do it. So he ended up mysteriously found dead. Then the authority went to Silverius in the Melkite Coptic Egyptians. Justinian asked him to give up the donation of Constantine. He refused to do it. So Justinian had his army general and his wife, the army general's wife, to serve treason papers on Silverius. So they brought him up for charges on treason. They put him in jail, and he died there. So they got rid of him. The next Coptic Egyptian, where the donation of Constantine passed to, was a man by the name of Vigilius. Okay? Now, he asked Vigilius, Justinian, to give it up. He refused to do it. So he went to his lawyer, this African Coptic Egyptian Melkite lawyer by the name of Theodore Osiris, who told Constantine told Justinian how to take back the donation of Constantine. He said, what you do, boss, is to go and ask Vigilius to take communion with the monophysites. Now he knew full well that Vigilius, who was a Melkite, would refuse to take communion with a monophysite. If they both took communion together, then Justinian would have a chance to wipe out both of them. And he would take back the donation of Constantine. But Vigilius refused to do that. See? So, in 553, Justinian called the fifth ecumenical council meeting to come about, called the Council of Constantinople II, 553. Okay, trying to get that donation out of the hands of the Melkite, so he can become the ecclesiastical ruler over that church, as well as political over all of Egypt, Syria, Turkey, and so forth and so on. What they did in 555, Justinian ran Pelagius all over Africa, trying to catch up with him. They eventually caught up with him and they killed him. And he took back the donation of Constantine at that time, at that point. And that was in 555. Now this is where your first appointed African, you want to call him a pope, you can do that. Justinian has the authority to appoint the patriarch of the Hagia Sophia and the patriarch of Constantinople. The patriarch of the Hagia Sophia sat on the throne in the Church of the Hagia Sophia and represented Christ, okay? Just like the Pope in Rome today sits in Rome as the vicar of Christ. This seat, the patriarch of the Hagia Sophia, was appointed. The person who sits in that and take that position is now the Papa or the Pope of the Hagia Sophia, Church of Hagia Sophia. His name was Pelagius I. He was the first African to sit and represent Christ at the Church of Hagia Sophia. And he also appointed, Justinian also appointed, the Patriarch of Constantinople. The word, the Patriarch of Constantinople, signifies a monophysite. That individual is a monophysite. And both of them had offices in the Church of Hagia Sophia. You see? So now, why did Justinian appoint the Patriarch of the Hagia Sophia, which represented Christ, Pelagius, which was the first Papa or Pope, African. Okay, he was an African.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, and then Justinian also appointed a monophysite to be the Patriarch of Constantinople, which that word signified the Melkite. See, they both held office, like I mentioned, in that one building, the Hagia Sophia. You see? So, and every succeeding emperor of the Byzantine Empire were in charge of the Coptic Egyptian community and in charge of the Hagia Sophia. And he was in power to appoint different patriarchs of the Hagia Sophia. He was able to appoint different patriarchs of Constantinople, which was a monophysite. You see that?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know.
Okay.
And then how does it become the Pope in Rome? How does it become the Vatican?
Well, that goes into, you're running ahead now.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to walk you through these ecumenical council meetings. Okay?
Yes.
Which I've never done this before. Okay?
Yes.
Now we're up to the fifth council meeting, Council of Constantinople, Constantinople II. Okay? After the council of Chalcedon, you're going to come up to stop. That's it. You don't. Oh man. The sixth council meeting we come up to is called the Council of Constantinople III, 680 ACE. And that was called by Constantine the Fourth in 680. Okay? And they were still, this polemic was going on between the Monophysites and the Melchites over the human nature of this Jesus the Christ. I'm sorry, of Christ. It wasn't Jesus then, but of the Christ. And this council meeting was to dispel the term monothelitism and monothelitism. Monothelitism is one will. Monothelitism is one energy. And what the Byzantine rulers did was trying to get the Melchites and the Monophysites together on one accord so they can have peace. So it was thought up, said, now, would you accept monothelitism, L-E-T-ism, which means one will in Christ? Or can you accept monothelitism, L-I-T-ism, in Christ, which means one energy? And the Monophysite says, no, we couldn't do that. So the argument went on. Mm-hmm. This is something very important.
Right.
Now, in modulating through history, I'm just going over, I'm not giving you the complete historical origin of how Christianity came about, because it will take up too much time and too much energy right now. Mm-hmm. But keep watching African community. We're going up to the time of 711 and 711-13, to the time of Pelagius. Very important. At that time, during that time, these Europeans were usurping the Byzantine emperors very fast. And the main stronghold of the Byzantine Empire was in the double-walled city of Constantinople, where the Church of Hagia Sophia is located.
Right.
Okay?
Right. Yeah.
Now, the Pelagius came up with the bright idea to tell the people of the double-walled city living in that city who the new emperor was. He came up with the bright idea, said, I'll have my picture painted of me and put it all over Constantinople so the people know who the new emperor is. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now, that was done. Now, when that's an idea that was to be done, but he didn't get a chance to do it because he was usurped. So in 717, 718, you had Leo III to come in. Now, prior to that, before Leo III came in 717, 718, this idea of having the picture of to be painted of Pelagius to put all over Constantinople, which never came about, but the idea was there. Mm-hmm. So Pontius, who was the picture of the Hagia Sophia, gave the incoming picture of the Hagia Sophia, Gregory, the idea. Okay? And he had the picture of Christ painted and put up all over Constantinople. This icon picture that you know today as Jesus the Christ. When Leo III came in 717, 17, 7, 18. And that image of Christ that was causing a problem in the Monophysite community. He said, well, we can't have it, we want peace. So he had two African brothers, Constantine the Black and Thomas, to create a document. And that document is known in history as the iconoclasm. The word iconoclasm means the breaking of the image. When he came in, Leo came in, he had all of those images of Christ taken down, because you've heard a picture is worth 1,000 words.
That's right.
See? So if you can get this image of a Christ being painted as a man, you see, that's the idea. Is to paint this picture of Christ as a man. So people can see a male figure, and the argument was stop between the Monophysites and the Melchites.
Right.
Didn't do it.
Right.
So he had all those pictures taken down, had Constantine the Black and Thomas to create his decree, known in history as iconoclasm, the breaking of the image. And he made that against the law to have any images of a Christ be put in place. Now, this brings us up to the time of an ecumenical council that no one is talking about. I seem to be the only one that's talking about the Council of Hagia, 754. The Council of Hagia came about, 754, called by Leo's son, Constantine V, to sustain that decree of iconoclasm. In other words, keep it in force. Now we're going to come up to the 8th council meeting of the Council of Nicaea II, which is iconoclasm council meeting. You see? And the Romans who were running the government in Syria, Turkey, Egypt, etc., came to the Irene, who was the empress and the wife of the grandson of Leo. He was Leo the Fourth, grandson of Leo the Third. And they said to her, we're going to kill your husband, and we're going to make you the empress, because, and I want you to call a council meeting to denounce iconoclasm. And she allowed them, couldn't stop them, but she allowed her husband to be killed, and she became the empress because they had a 10-year-old son who was too young to become the Byzantine emperor. So she became the empress, the Empress Irene, who called the 8th ecumenical council meeting, the Council of Nicaea I, to come about, and she restored iconoclasm back. You see that? That's how that was done. Now we're going to come up modulating. We're going to come up to the 9th ecumenical council meeting, the Council of Phocius Philippi council meeting, 869 and 870. Okay, Phocius was a Coptic Egyptian who refused to accept the image of Christ in the creed. Let's go back. Where's the creed? The ancient Egyptian African divine triad of Osiris the father, God, Isis the goddess mother, and Haru the sun. He refused to accept Serapis there. And that caused what is known in history as the Phocius Philippi controversy. The word Philippi, that's another name for Christ. The word Philippi. See? Now we're going to modulate. Mm-hmm. We're going to come up to the time of the Turks, like I told you earlier, that the Seljukian Turks had erupted out of Iran, coming from Afghanistan, mm-hmm. into Northeast Africa via Iran.
That's the Turks?
The Turks. This is in 1071. I took you up to 869, 870. Mm-hmm. Now I'm taking you up a little further in history, up to 1071.
Right.
When the Turks came in, the Seljukian Turks, or the Seljuks, mm-hmm. they're coming in, and now they're going to usurp the Byzantine Empire, territories, land areas. You see? And that caused, like I said before, Alexis I, Commentris, to call the first crusade of 1096.
Yes.
You see that?
Now you got my attention.
Yeah, because see, if you don't ask me no questions, I can tell you all this. Just listen.
Yes.
Okay. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now, so they come in with a different dialect. Mm-hmm. It's called Arabic. Mm-hmm. So they come out. See, like I mentioned before, you got Afghanian Arabic, Caspian, because the Caspian Sea is in Afghanistan. Caspian Arabic. You see that? Mm-hmm. You got Kuwaiti Arabic, Iranian Arabic, Iraqi Arabic, you got Arabian Arabic, Egyptian Arabic, you got Libyan Arabic, you got Tunisian Arabic, Algerian Arabic, Morocco Arabic, Mauritanian Arabic. Mm-hmm. All these are different dialects brought in by the Arabs. It started with the Seljukian Turks, or the Seljuks, 1071, erupting out of Iran, taking territory from the Byzantine Empire and emperors, causing Alexis I in 1096 to call the First Crusade, call for the first Crusaders to come into Northeast Africa to save his Byzantine Empire and Christendom. You see where that fits? Mm-hmm. See? Yeah. So now, who overran them? Later on was Osmanli, who created what is known as the Ottoman Empire, or the Ottoman Turks. They overran, or let's say, they amalgamated the Seljukian Turks into their society. Mm-hmm. See? So now they become the Ottoman Turks. Ottoman Empire started in 1300.
Okay.
Now, 60 years prior to that, mm-hmm. there was a man by the name of Mohammed, not Mohammed, but his name was Ibn al-Arabi, alias Muhammad. His name was alias Muhammad. Cut that off for a moment. When the Ottoman Empire came about in 1300, 60 years prior to that, we're talking about 1240. There was a man by the name of Muhyiddin Ibn Ali, aka Ibn al-Arabi, alias Muhammad. And his disciples was going around teaching his doctrine, because he lived over there in Egypt. He was born in Spain. He was an African born in Spain during the time of the Moors' occupation in Spain, 1165. Okay, now he became the Muhammad. His doctrines were being taught all throughout North Africa by his disciples. When the Ottoman Turks came in 1300s, they took a sword and walked up to people living in North Africa with a sword and said, "Muhammad or die." And that was the beginning of Mohammedanism. Not Islam. See, Islam today is something different. It's a different history today. But when Muslims ask me and want to debate me about Islam, I ask them, which Islam do you want to debate about? One or two? They don't know what I'm talking about. But the first Islam was Mohammedanism. The doctrine of Ibn al-Arabi, alias Muhammad. See, the alias is very important. What can you do with an alias? You can create a whole new history and a different character. See, that's just like Richard Reeves, alias what? Superman. You got a different history. He's going in the phone booth, changing into a Superman costume, flying in the air. You got a different story now. See, Richard Reeves, he couldn't do that. See, you got Clayton Moore, alias the Lone Ranger. You got him shooting silver bullets and all that story. You see, you got William Boyd, alias Hopalong Cassidy. You got Sean Connery, alias 007. You see what you can do with aliases? See, so the Ottoman Turks took that sword and said, "Muhammad or die." They'd rather have Muhammad. So they became Mohammedanism, including our African members in the Coptic Egyptian community. Got them too. So they became Mohammedans. You see? So now, during the Ottoman Empire, they took over all the territory of the Byzantine Empire, the territory of Northeast Africa. Jordan, like I said, was just a region, wasn't a country until 1929. After the British government was given the mandate by the League of Nations after World War I. World War I was 1914 to 1919. I'm sorry, 1914 to 1918. That's the end of World War I. He was given that mandate. See, so now I'm giving you the Byzantine era, or the area that they control. They took back from the Byzantine. They took it from the Byzantine emperors. You had the territory of Turkey, Syria.
Right.
You had, like I said, wasn't no Jordan. Jordan was created in 1929 by the British government, which they call it Transjordan. That's a different story. They took over the territory that's known as Arabia. It was no Iraq at that time. Iraq didn't come about until the British government used that mandate coming from the League of Nations in 1920 to board off a portion of Arabia to make Iraq. And they boarded off a portion of Iraq to make Kuwait. The reason being that they didn't want all that oil being concentrated in one area under one ruler. You see? And the territory of the Seljukian, of the Ottoman Empire was also Iran, Yemen, Palestine. the West Bank, and so forth and so on.
Yeah.
You see? And in 1922, the League of Nations gave the French a mandate over Syria.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't give it to the British. They gave the British everything I told you. They gave the French the mandate over Syria in 1922. The Frenchmen took Syria and boarded it off and made Lebanon out of it and Beirut over in that area. See, so that's how you got those two areas over there with those names. And of course, Palestine was over there. And they took that area over there, which is Northeast Africa, and named it the Middle East. Mm-hmm. See, the land of the Bible. See, and then in 1924, the British government appointed and made a king of Arabia by the name of Abdul Aziz al-Saud to be the king of Arabia. And what he did in 1924, he called the first meeting in Islam's history, 1926. And in my book, The Historical Origin of Islam, I'll give you all the minutes to that meeting. You see that? Now, and that's not only the first meeting in Islam's history, that was the first Hajj. It was in Mecca. It was no Mecca before that time, just a land region called Makoraba. And Medina was called Lathrib. Wasn't no Medina. See, it was just a barren land area. And when he called that first meeting, you see, let's go back to the reason why they called that first meeting, because in 1870, this is where today's Islam come in. Today's Islam is based upon a book called the Quran. In 1870, the AIU, Alliance Israelite Universal of Paris, France, sent a group of Jewish theologians over in Syria in 1870 to create what is known as today's Quran. And it took them 49 years for that Quran to be accepted in the Arab world. And they also collaborated with Christian scholars, with the approval of Arab scholars. So 49 years later, after 1870, after the Jewish scholars had created this Quran, the Arabs over in that area accepted that Quran in 1919 in Cairo, Egypt. This is history. In Cairo, Egypt. And that's how you have, now within that Quran, Brother Clemson, is this. Interspersed in today's Quran, you have Jewish writings in there. You see? And also interspersed in today's Quran, you have the 4 Christian Gospels. See? So, the reason being, why it was so important for the Jewish scholars to create a Quran for the Arab world, so they can get Abraham in there. See, Abraham is a biblical character, non-human. He's never walked the earth as a human being. He's a biblical character that you can tie in all 3 major Western religions with: Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. You see that? See? He ties right in, Abraham. So who else would do it besides Jewish scholars to get that in, get their lick in first? See? Now, they tell you that Muhammad fled Mecca in 622, which is the 7th century, met the angel Gabriel which is a little bird. And the angel Gabriel passed the word from God to Muhammad, that God wanted Muhammad to pass on to mankind. They said that Muhammad was illiterate, that he memorized, using the term mnemonics, to memorize every word that the angel Gabriel told him. And he memorized that and dictated it to a scribe. When he dictated to the scribe was writing this down, thus creating the Quran. Thus creating today's Quran, right? But this was in 622, which is the 7th century. In 622, there was no Jews around. There was no Bibles around. There was no Qurans around. None of that. It was no, and it was no Christian literature around. Only Christianity, but no Christian literature. You don't get Christian literature until Jesus Erasmus come on the scene in 1516, bringing forth the Novum Instrumentum to create the New Testament. Okay? You don't get the first printed Bible on earth until 1475, 30 years after the Vatican was created. See? So therefore, but today, interspersed in that Quran, today's Quran, you got the Pentateuch and the Psalms. And you got the 4 Christian Gospels in there, interspersed in there today. But you didn't. So where did it come from? Jewish scholars from the AIU, Alliance Israelite Universal of Paris, France. They wrote it. They created the Quran. If you look in there, if you read my books, Historical Origin of Christianity, there's a lot in that book that I'm telling you that I'm not going to tell you on this tape. You read the book. I'm not trying to sell you no book. Okay? You can buy the book. You don't have to buy. I don't make a living selling books. But it's in, if you're curious enough, buy the book and it's right in there. First meeting in Islam's history, etc., etc. See? Now, so let's go up to the time and continue with the Ottoman Turks. They'll take over the complete territory of the Byzantine Empire, except for one double-walled city of Constantinople, okay, known today as Istanbul, Turkey. In 1453, using a cannon, which was a new war weapon at that time, created in Europe, Muhammad II blew a hole in the double-walled city of Constantinople, and his army entered the double-walled city of Constantinople, seizing the city and seizing the church of Hagia Sophia, the world's first Christian church. 14 years prior to that, in 1439, John VIII went into the Curia in Florence, Italy. This is where the transfer of Christianity coming into Europe now. Okay. You've been waiting for that answer.
Yes.
John VIII, in 1439, went into the Curia in Florence, Italy. The word Curia means college. And 1439, they were 42 years into the Renaissance era of Europe. He went into that college.
He African? Is he African? He black?
No, not yet. Not yet. No, this is all the Byzantine rules are European. Told you, stop.
Okay.
Like I said, after Mohammed II in 1453 took a cannon and blew a hole on the side of the double-walled city of Constantinople, his troops entered that city, took over the city as well as the church of Hagia Sophia. But 14 years prior to that, John VIII, one of the last of the Byzantine emperors, went into Florence, Italy. At the Curia there, the word Curia means college, C-U-R-I-A, means college. Mm-hmm. And he relinquished the donation of Constantine. It goes back to how important that donation of Constantine relates to this. Mm-hmm. He relinquished the donation of Constantine to make way for the transfer of the seat of Christianity into Europe. He had to relinquish the donation of Constantine first because he had in control over that church by way of the donation of Constantine. Mm-hmm. See? So he relinquished his power over it in order to make way for it to be moved into Europe. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now, 6 years after he did that, on the outskirts of Rome, over the catacombs, Eugenius IV and Nicholas V dug up those graves down in the ground that is known as the catacombs, dug them all up to make way for the coming and the building of the Vatican. This is in 1445, 6 years after John VIII had relinquished the donation of Constantine at the college in Florence, Italy. And they began to build over the catacombs St. Peter's Church in 1445. And today, St. Peter's Church is known as St. Peter's Basilica. Okay? If you look at Roman Vatican today, the Vatican on the outskirts of Rome, the Vatican is nothing but a replica of the double-walled city of Constantinople, where the first seat of Christianity was. See, so the Vatican is the second seat. And they duplicated what that double-walled city and how it was built. The world's first Christian church, Hagia Sophia, is there. Over in the Vatican, you got St. Peter's Basilica. They had obelisks in Constantinople. They got obelisks in the Vatican. The Vatican is a double wall with his own private army. They had a private army in the double-walled city in Constantinople, and so forth and so on. Okay? Now, so the beginning of the Vatican, the date, 1445, the beginning of St. Peter's church known as St. Peter's Basilica, 1445. Now listen to this, Clemson. 30 years after the Vatican was built, the world's first printed Bible came out in 1475. See, a lot went on in the 15th century. But let me backtrack. In order to have a printed Bible, you have to have a printing press. Mm-hmm. The printing press first came about by Johannes Gutenberg, who printed a printing press with movable print in 1437. See? This is at the beginning of the Renaissance era. All of Europe, the Europeans living in Europe, could not read or write. So the day, during that time, the Renaissance era, it came about beginning in 1397. It was launched by an African by the name of Manuel Chrysoloras, the Golden Teacher, who came into Florence, Italy in 1397 and introduced the rudiments of the Greek alphabet to those few male students at the Curia there in Florence, Italy, thus kicking off what is known in history as the Renaissance era for the Europeans, the age of learning. See that? Mm-hmm. And then 1437 came Johannes Gutenberg with his printing press, with movable print. He didn't have any money, so he borrowed money from the capitalist by the name of Johannes Fust, F-U-S-T, who was a capitalist. He loaned him money on a high interest rate that he knew he couldn't pay back. Mm-hmm. So he couldn't pay it back, so Johannes Fust confiscated the printing press with movable print. Now you're able to print up thousands of pieces of literature, books and so forth, but who could read the books? All of Europe was illiterate. Mm-hmm. But the printing press is a good invention, a good investment, because it was just a matter of time for the age of learning to spread all over Europe, which it did during the 15th and 16th time of the Renaissance era, 15th and 16th century. Okay? So now with that printing press, they printed the world's first Bible 30 years after the Roman Catholic Church was created in the Vatican. Okay? 1475. Where was it created? Where was that first Bible? Where was it created? It was created in Italy. What city in Italy? Bologna. What alphabet did they use to write that Bible with? The Greek alphabet. Whose material did they use to create that Bible? Moses Maimonides, called Maimon. Or Moses Maimon, called Maimonides. Okay? 14. What was the Orthodox name of it? It's called the Hebrew Bible. Who formulated that Bible? Johannes Ruslan and two of his Italian peers, Marsilio Ficino, Pico della Mirandola. Those three collaborated and produced, using the material of Moses Maimon called Maimonides, to create that Bible. And they call it the Hebrew Bible. Now in the meantime, the Roman Catholic Church was up and about, but they had no literature for their object. The object of Christianity is Jesus the Christ. They didn't have no literature for that, for that object. So the Roman Catholic Church was left without literature for their object, which is Jesus the Christ. Johannes Ruslan created and translated from Greek into Latin a Bible, which was the Hebrew Bible, and he gave it to the Pope. And that incinerated the Pope, made him mad as hell, because they had no literature for their object, which was Jesus the Christ. So in 1500, Pope Alexander VI commissioned a homosexual and a playwright of Europe at that time, an ex-Roman Catholic priest, a man by the name of Desiderius Erasmus, to create something on the object of Christianity. He had no literature. It took him 16 years to create the Novum Instrumentum. In 1516, he came out with the Novum Instrumentum, which consists of the Synoptic Gospel, Mark, Matthew, and Luke. They always tell you that John came later. Which John did come later. John came later in the King James Version of 1611. But here you got Desiderius Erasmus, the homosexual, and all these Christians are knocking the homosexuals and stuff like that, but they're going to the church reading his material that was created by a homosexual, which is called the New Testament. In 1516, he produced the Novum Instrumentum, which is the Synoptic Gospel, Mark, Matthew, and Luke. They call that Q literature, QLA literature. Okay? And it consists of Mark, Matthew, and Luke. He also created 1 and 2 Peter, which you have the Pauline letters in there. And he also created 1 and 2 Corinthians, and Galatians, and Epistles to the Romans. Those are his 9 manuscripts that he produced to make up the Novum Instrumentum. In 1516, 1519 they changed it to the Novum Testamentum. In 1535 they changed it to the New Testament. See, Novum means new. Testament means testament, or testamentum means testament. So the New Testament. See, now, if your viewers will go and check out the Pfefferkorn-Russlin controversy, they can get some added information of what went on during that time about that Bible. Okay? Now, Pfefferkorn, P-F-E-F-F-E-R-K-O-R-N, Russlin, R-E-U-C-H-L-I-N, controversy of 1510. Okay? Look it up. It'll give you lots of insight on what went on and what was going on with the argument over that Bible. The world's first Bible now, printed Bible. Now, you got the Hebrew Bible, and now you got the New Testament out, right? It's separate. Not under one cover like it is today. See? So how did both Bibles get under one cover? In 1527, a man by the name of Jacob van Liesveld took both Bibles and put them under one cover. Dropped the name Hebrew Bible and said Old Testament to correspond with the New Testament. So people reading today say, oh, this is older than the New Testament. It's all the same. It's not. It was 2 different histories, 3 different histories. You see? So today, as I speak, Christians all over the world are getting and have learned through Western Christianity. But the tenets and the foundation of Christianity was made by our Coptic Melkite Egyptians that created this image and the tenets, the foundation of Christianity for the European. You see that? So that is how Christianity came into Europe, and over in Europe, the Vatican commissioned an artist by the name of Leonardo da Vinci to draw a picture of a Christ sitting at a table with 12 disciples, 12 other males, commissioned by the Pope to do just that. And they attached a story to it. That Judas Iscariot going to betray Jesus and all that kind of stuff. 12 pieces of silver, blah, blah, blah. You see that? That's just a story attached to it. There was never a Last Supper, never a Christ to have a Last Supper. Just a drawing by Leonardo da Vinci with a story attached. They also commissioned Leonardo da Vinci to draw the crucifixion, the crucified Christ. That's just a picture.
Right.
And a story attached to it.
Right.
Fair to the believers in Christianity. Never happened. See? They commissioned him to draw a picture of Mary Magdalene. There's never been a Mary Magdalene. Just a picture of a Mary Magdalene with an attached story fair to the believers. So they believe the story that this Mary Magdalene, after the crucifixion of Jesus, went to his tomb and she found a rock, had rolled back off of the tomb. She looked down in the tomb was empty, and Jesus went on up to heaven with his Father. Story. Never happened. All a painting. See? See? So then the Roman Catholic Church commissioned Michelangelo and to design the chapel over there. You know, where he got the pictures of this Jesus and so forth, all this stained glass. You see? It's the Sistine Chapel, so forth and so on. All that's part of history of this. Now you're in Europe now with Christianity. So that would be what I had to say about that right now.
Can I ask you, finally, Walter, if you can give us as much insight on the role of Africans in the development of Europe, especially their university systems, the role that I'll say the Moors, but who are Egyptians, but in the building of Sonata, Spain, and their role throughout Europe. What did they do? What did they bring about to make European civilization what it is?
Well, you got to go back to the Moors, like you said, for that. The Moors is a nickname for Africans that came out of Morocco and Mauritania, crossing the Mediterranean, going into Spain to set up the world's second civilization. The third civilization was set up over in this hemisphere by the Moors. But we're going to go back to 1051, when the Moors began to cross the Mediterranean, coming from Morocco, Mauritania, into Spain to set up a second civilization. They built those cities over there, Seville, Cadillac, and et cetera, et cetera. And they had the ability to do that because they an extension of their ancestors, who were the world's first builders, the ancient Egyptians. So the Moor and ancient Egyptian is one and the same. I want people to understand that. Okay? Just like the Negro today in this country, as I speak, are connected with the Moors and the ancient Egyptians. So the ancient Egyptians and the Moors vanished and the Negro appeared. See? So I'll get into that. But the Moors building those cities over there in Spain, bringing civilization over there. In 1482, Ferdinand and Isabella called for the expelling of Moors out of Spain because Christianity was over there then. See, and Spain had accepted Catholicism from the Vatican, from the Roman Catholic Church. So now they wanted the Moors out of Spain. So they began to expel them, 1482. And they wanted them out because of racial and religious reasons. See, now you got to remember that these Moors were Mohammedans. Okay, so they went against Catholicism, Christian religion. They were Africans, and they did not want the world to know that these Africans had brought civilization to their shores and their land. So they began to expel them. Some of them went into Europe They was used because they knew how to build. They were literate men. And they went into Europe and began to build over in Europe and show the Europeans how to build. They went into Mali, and when they went into Mali in Africa, they began to build themselves homes, and they went into Timbuktu. They lived in Timbuktu, and where you find the University of Timbuktu, but you won't find an actual university that can be identified as the University of Timbuktu. It took me a long time to find this. The University of Timbuktu signifies that the Moors coming out of Spain, run out of Spain by Ferdinand and Isabella, into Mali, building homes over there for themselves, bringing with them their manuscripts of different subjects that they taught over in Spain. Now, they bring these manuscripts, building this house, to set up their teaching institution there in Mali. And that is what's called the University of Timbuktu. The books and the manuscripts that they brought over there to teach from. You see? So then Ferdinand and Isabella hired Christopher Columbus. Okay? Well, the one wanted to debate over that, we're not going to debate that, whether that was a Christopher Columbus or not. You know, that's a debate, which I understand that. But let's forsake that and get to the main crux of the thing. Christopher Columbus came over in this hemisphere with the African Moors. Okay? Remember now, during the time of slavery in this country, you had 380,000 men and women who were free, wasn't slaves.
380,000?
Yes, they were not slaves. To attest to that, you ever seen the movie 12 Years a Slave?
Yes.
Wasn't he a free man?
Yeah.
Living in New York, right?
Right.
They drugged him and took him to a slave-holding state and made him a slave out of him. But he lived, as you see in that movie, dressed, and had a family and home and everything. You see that? See, so 380,000 Africans living in this country were not enslaved. Only if they were found in the slave-holding states that they became slaves. See, and they had to take this brother from New York to a slave-holding state to make him a slave. See, so the Moors are over in this hemisphere, right?
Where'd they come from?
Out of Spain. I told you where they originally came out of Morocco. I went over there. That's where they originally came from. They came, I told you, some went into Europe, some went into Mali, some went into North Africa, some went into Egypt. They went all over. Okay? Now they're over in this hemisphere with Christopher Columbus. See? And like I said before, during the time of slavery, you had 380,000 Africans that were not enslaved unless they were caught into a slave state. See? To attest to that, I said 12 years a slave would attest to that. Okay? Now, over in this hemisphere, when the Portuguese and Spanish slave traders went into Africa to get human beings and took them out of Africa to bring back to this hemisphere to make slaves out of them in 1619, landing in Florida, they put the Moors, these Africans, and the enslaved human cargo of Africans coming out of Africa to be put into slavery under one umbrella. They put the Moors and these enslaved Africans under one umbrella and called them and named them Negroes. You see? to wipe out the Moors. So they're all Negroes now. What does the word Negro means? Black. Black and Negro is synonymous. You see? So now you have so you have the Moors are gone now. They're Negroes now. You see that? So this is how that went about. And they began, Benjamin Banneker was a Moor. John Hanson was a Moor. The Moors built the president's palace over in Washington, D.C. and built the White House. Those were Moors that did that. Because why? They knew mathematics. You can't build nothing unless you know mathematics. They were literate people. You see that? So you don't see the Moors today. So the ancient Egyptian, the Coptic Egyptians, and the Moors all vanished, and the Negro appeared. So today, as you and I and our children go to school over in this hemisphere in America, we are taught away from ancient Egypt. That's done on purpose, Clemson. It's taught away from it. They don't want us to identify with our ancestors, ancient Egyptians. You know what would happen to white supremacy? If they taught us that we were descendants of the ancient Egyptians, white supremacy would fall flat on its face. Because they can't say that we're inferior anymore. We can say that they are inferior if we so desire. Because of our ancestors left us an immortal legacy to be superior if we want to use that term. You see that? So, if you want to wipe out white supremacy, identify yourself and call yourself an African ancient Egyptian. Not an Egyptian, because those white Arabs living in Egypt today, they are Egyptians. They're invaders, occupiers. Their ancestors did not build the Great Pyramid or bring forth civilization for all of humanity. Did you see the movie Selma? Anybody seen the movie Selma? You see where this woman is walking with Coretta Scott King in a scene there. And she was telling Coretta Scott King, we come from a great people, a people who brought civilization to the world. It's right there in that movie Selma.
That's true. Yeah.
And what people is she talking about that brought civilization to the whole entire world? It was the ancient Egyptians, our ancestors. And we have to get back to that. Our greatness is unclaimed in the continent of Africa. Sitting there, waiting for us. But we cannot, and we must not continue to call our name and identify with the name Black, Negro, and African Americans. Can't do that anymore. We can't use the Portuguese and Spaniards' name anymore that they gave us to hide our identifying ourselves, identity as being the ancient Egyptians. Can't do that. See that? No longer do that. So every name that you call yourself, there's a history attached to it. The history is attached to Black and Negro and African Americans. That means that you're telling the world that your ancestors were enslaved in America. That's as far as you can go, is in America. Only in America you find Negroes. The rest of the races of people around the world can go to the world map of human geography and find where their ancestors came from. To hide our identifying ourselves, identity as being the ancient Egyptians. Can't do that. See that? No longer do that. So every name that you call yourself, there's a history attached to it. The history is attached to Black and Negro and African Americans. That means that you're telling the world that your ancestors were enslaved in America. That's as far as you can go, is in America. Only in America you find Negroes. The rest of the races of people around the world can go to the world map of human geography and find where their ancestors came from. But these people who call themselves Black, these Africans in America who call themselves Black, Negro, and African Americans can't do that. They can only point to America. So we're going to have to stop using that term and find our way back and claim our greatness.
That is so true.
And another thing we're going to have to do as a people, we're going to have to stop going into these churches worshiping that dead white man on the cross that is detrimental to us as a race of people. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You're worshiping the white man in the form of a Jesus the Christ.
Mm-hmm.
You're supporting white supremacy.
That is correct.
If you want to stop white supremacy, stop worshiping the white man as your God.
Mm-hmm.
You're supporting, when you go in these churches, white superiority. And you're supporting African inferiority. That's what you're doing. And you don't even realize it. And you don't want nobody to disturb you and tell you that you're doing something wrong. Mm-hmm. You don't want them to say anything to you.
Mm-hmm.
See?
Keep going and kind of just give us an overview. You can summarize this last piece.
So when you go into these churches and you worship that dead image on that cross, you're shooting your own self in the foot. Because what you're doing, you are passing that disease and virus on to the next generation, your children. Because your mother and father pass it on to you. Your grandparents pass it on to your parents. Your great grandparents pass it on to your great grandparents, and so forth and so on. So today, as I speak, you have transferred this disease called Christianity and Islam and any man-made religion to your children. So today, your children are confused because you have told them to come to church and bow down to this dead white man on the cross, that he is your God and Savior, that he will save you, that anything that you want, you have any problems, take it to Jesus and pray, and it'll be done and given to you. And you found that, you should have found that to be not true. You cannot do that. You are doing a disservice to yourself and your family and your community. Okay? So if you want to stop white supremacy, stop going to church. You want to stop white superiority, stop going to church. Worshiping this white man and calling him your God. Let me ask you this question, Christians. This is a question for all Christians. I want to ask you this question. Do you think that the white race will take their children into a church where a dark-skinned African is hanging on a cross and teach their children and their family that that dark-skinned African hanging on a cross was their God and their Savior? Would you think the white race would do that? The answer is no, and you know it's no. And I'm going to go a little further. I'm going to say, hell no, they wouldn't do it. So why are you doing it to your children and your family, making them inferior and confused like you are? Your parents made you confused. Your grandparents made your parents confused, and so forth and so on. So we have to stop this confusion. We're going to have to stop worshiping this white man as your God. And you go in these churches and you sing your guts out, praying to this dead white man on the cross. And when you come out, after you get through praying to this dead white man on the cross as your God, he shoots you down. Members of his race shoots you down in the streets like dogs. And you know that. Discriminate against us like we are non-humans, non-existents. We have to beg him for justice, beg this white man for a job, beg him for everything. But you go in there and pray to this God and he gives you nothing. You got to come out and start begging, because praying is a form of begging. That's all it is. That's what praying is about, form of begging. So at this moment, this is all I have to say right now.
Walter, maybe you'll tell us a little bit about your next book. A little bit.
You want me to tell you a little something about my next book?
Yes.
The next book that is coming out should be out at the end of the year, the first of 20,000, what am I talking about, 2016. That book should come out in 2016, my next book.
This way I have something to go on to write the preface.
So at the end of this year, 2015, or the first of next year, 2016, my new book will be out. My wife and I, we have collaborated on writing this book together. And the name of the book is called Dispelling Myths of Ancient Egypt. And in this book, I'm pulling the cover off of Western academia. And I'll give you a little synopsis of what it's about. The first chapter, I'm repudiating the Hyksos. Writing about that, very important. A lot of the information is in the writing of this book. The second chapter is a warning I give to all African scholars. Do not use the chronology of ancient Egypt as it is used today, because the ancient Egyptians did not write a history of themselves. It was the European who wrote a history, the supposed history of ancient Egypt, but they used the Bible to do so. And I'll give you in this book 5 different chronologies as an example. The third chapter is the repudiation of the biblical Persians. I'm telling you, there's no biblical Persians, never was a Persian, so forth and so on. The fourth chapter is about why the Meta-Natural hieroglyphics has never been deciphered. I have that as an appendix in my first book, The Historical Origin of Christianity. But in this book, I'm adding more to that subject, okay? Which gives it more understanding and a larger extension of it. The fifth chapter is, the writing is very important. And Clemson Brown brought this to me many, many years ago about his granddaughter going to school and was given a book on the Sumerians and the cuneiform. And he asked me about that. So I signed my wife, Arnetta Williams, to dig up all the history she could find about the cuneiform and Sumerians, and I helped her do that. So that fifth chapter is called and entitled The Sumerian Cuneiform Exposed, Mystery Exposed. The Sumerian Cuneiform Exposed. So we're exposing it. She's been researching this one subject for over 3 years now. So we're at the climax of wrapping it up, and just a matter of time putting all the little pieces together. So that's just a synopsis about the new book that's coming out. So that's it, Clemson.
Thank you, Arthur.
Okay?
Thank you, thank you, thank you.